We're going to talk about Charlie Chaplin's first talkie, The Great Dictator. In the late 1930s, Charlie Chaplin was considered the only Hollywood filmmaker to continue to make silent films. Talkies were officially inaugurated in 1927 with The Jazz Singer, and from there, almost every Hollywood director and star got into the sound game or faded away like a Norma Desmond. Chaplin felt extremely conflicted about the new technology. He claimed to be extremely obsessed with a depressing fear of seeming old-fashioned, and yet he felt like silent films were more artistic. He also feared that his little tramp character wouldn't translate into dialogue. Chaplin had an extraordinary amount of control over his own projects. From a very young age, he was obsessed with performing and acting, appearing on the stage and traveling on tours around the vaudeville circuit, first in his homeland of England and then North America. In 1914, he was picked up off his second American tour and asked if he wanted to act in films. An early medium, Chaplin was scouted by the New York Motion Picture Company, which filmed out of Keystone Studios. His first film, Making a Living, was not a film that Charlie Chaplin liked. He had a slow start appearing in Keystone shorts, and during this lull, Chaplin began teaching himself about filmmaking. This meant that he had a ton of ideas that came pouring out of him, to the chagrin of many of the earliest directors that he worked with. He worked with Mabel Normand on many of her shorts, and in Mabel's Strange Predicament, Chaplin debuted the little tramp character he'd soon make famous. Mabel Normand has been long forgotten, but has been credited as Charlie Chaplin's mentor, teaching him the ropes of filmmaking. And she knew a thing or two about ropes. At 22 years old, she had been in 100 films, and was the first damsel in distress ever tied to train tracks in a movie. However, Mabel and Charlie clashed so badly on Mabel at the Wheel that Mack Sennett of Keystone almost fired him, but instead Chaplin managed to convince Sennett to let him try directing. Caught in the Rain was Chaplin's directorial debut, and it became incredibly popular, allowing Charlie to start directing most of his work from there. Charlie began pumping out a film a week for the rest of the year. He wasn't done working with Mabel Normand either, co-writing with her and even directing Mabel's Married Life. At the end of 1914, Mack Sennett directed Keystone's only feature-length comedy starring Charlie Chaplin and Mabel Normand, as well as the Keystone Cops and Marie Dressler, Tilly's Punctured Romance. When this feature was released and Charlie's year-long contract was over, he asked for $1,000 a week. Sennett refused and said that was way too much. However, S&A Film Manufacturing Company was willing to pay him $12.50 a week. For a comparison, after 100 films, Mabel Normand still made $150 a week. At S&A, Chaplin slowed down the pace, putting more work into his projects, and in 1915, his year with S&A, he made 14 films. He also began recruiting new collaborators: Edna Purvis, his new leading lady, Leo White, who would later appear in The Great Dictator and most of Charlie's films from here, Ben Turpin, Bud Jameson, Patty McGuire, and Fred Goodwins. This is where Chaplin's fame shot up, and he began being viewed as a cultural icon. They called it Chaplinitis. In 1916, Chaplin moved studios again to Mutual for a $670,000 contract, a huge sum that at that time shocked newspaper readers around the country. They also started a $1.5 million Charlie Chaplin producing company and built a studio. It was said that next to the war, Charlie Chaplin is the most expensive item in contemporary history. The contract gave him complete creative freedom to make 12 two-reel comedies. In 1917, with his output decreasing, Charlie ended his Mutual contract and signed for 8 films for First National Exhibitors Circuit for $1 million, starting with the film A Dog's Life, adding depth to the little tramp character. The frustration and lack of concern for quality building at these studios led Charlie Chaplin to join D.W. Griffith, Mary Pickford, and Douglas Fairbanks and start United Artists, a distribution company they had complete control over. Having control over at United Artists meant that Chaplin could move to directing silent features. He could also take far longer to work on each film. The Gold Rush, inspired by the story of the Donner Party, came out in 1925. City Lights, which was about the tramp falling in love with a blind flower girl. During the 3 years Chaplin spent making City Lights, 1927 and 1930, The Jazz Singer came out, and most filmmakers began moving away from silent films. But the new recording technology did give Chaplin the ability to write and record a score for the film. After that, Chaplin began doing soul searching, going to Western Europe in 1931, then traveling suddenly to Japan, where he was almost the target of an ultranationalist assassination that killed the Prime Minister on May 15th. The May 15th incident saw the League of Blood ultranationalist group plot to assassinate Charlie Chaplin to provoke a war with the United States. But they got the date wrong, as Chaplin was delayed, and they assassinated the Prime Minister instead. In 1932, he met Paulette Goddard, a 21-year-old actress who would become his wife and leading lady. Traveling around in the Great Depression gave Chaplin something he wanted to say and boosted his creativity again. In 1936, Chaplin released Modern Times, a silent comedy described by him as a satire on certain phases of our industrial life. Chaplin's travels, and let's be honest, the development of new technology that threatened to render him obsolete, made him worry in the wake of the Depression about how machines were both incredibly dangerous and may start leading to more unemployment like during the Depression. This anxiety was tackled through film and physical comedy. The film is full of references to automation and how individual workers struggle to adapt to machines. The political implications, absent from Chaplin's previous films, were taken notice of by critics and audiences, even as Chaplin tried to downplay that part of it. The film contains a sequence with a little tramp being caught in a giant machine, a communist strike at a factory, a sequence with narcotics. Everywhere the little tramp works taxes his body. Apart from the political implications, in retrospect, it's also considered a farewell to the little tramp character. This was his last silent film. After Modern Times, Chaplin and Goddard left for a trip to Asia where they traveled around Vietnam and then Hong Kong. During this time, tensions were rising and another world war got closer and closer. That brings us to Charlie Chaplin's first talkie, The Great Dictator. Charlie Chaplin had long noticed eerie parallels between himself and one Führer, Adolf Hitler. They both had the same mustache. They were born 4 days apart in April 1889. They both grew up poor and became world famous. In 1923, as Hitler was involved in the failed beer hall putsch, Chaplin was releasing his first feature-length film, A Woman in Paris, his first dramatic film which failed to get any attention. Chaplin told his kids, "He's the madman, I'm the comic," but it could have been the other way around. In 1931, on his soul-searching trip to Western Europe, Chaplin visited Berlin and was mobbed by German fans. This apparently enraged the Nazis who came to power in 1933. Nazi party members wrote the book The Jews Are Looking at You in 1934, where they described Charlie, apparently they were still angry 3 years later, as a disgusting Jewish acrobat. This despite the fact that Charlie Chaplin was not Jewish, he was a Christian from England. During this time, Chaplin also viewed Leni Riefenstahl's Triumph of the Will, which is where he learned to do Hitler's speech mannerisms for the movie. He watched it with the French director René Clair, who was so horrified by the film that he screamed out that it should never be seen. However, Chaplin's reaction was loud laughter.
That shouldn't. His Excellency has just referred to the Jewish people.
Chaplin plays the Fooey, Adenoid Hinkle, as well as the Jewish barber who looks like the Fooey. He'd write the story between 1938 and 1939, as Germany underwent Kristallnacht, grabbed the Sudetenland, invaded Austria, and just 6 days before filming started, Germany invaded Poland and Britain declared war on the Nazis. Still, the film upset both German and British diplomats in America, which was staying out of the war for now. Adenoid Hinkle gets in the car with his interior minister, Herr Garbage, and quietly asks, "How was the speech?" To which Garbage says, "You should have gone after the Jews more violently." In The Great Dictator, scenes of goose-stepping and pogroms are shown to be mere distractions to cover up for how bad things actually are in Tamania. In another part, the attacks against the Jews stop entirely, as Adenoid Hinkle hopes to get a loan from Hermann Epstein. The loan will be used to invade Austerlitz. We also get the lives of Tamanian Jews, including the Jewish barber who lost his memory trying to save one of Hinkle's future commanders in World War I, and the woman he falls in love with, Hannah, played by Paulette Goddard. Towards the end, the Jewish barber gets sent to a concentration camp. A thing that should be said was not yet known to be an extermination camp. Later, Chaplin wrote that he would not have made the film as a comedy if he had known the horrors of the Holocaust. In 1940, when The Great Dictator was premiered in New York City, the one part audiences didn't love was the speech at the end when Chaplin looks right into the camera. However, in 1941, as the U.S. entered the war after Pearl Harbor, FDR, who liked the film, as did Churchill, invited Charlie Chaplin to give his final speech on the radio to the American people.
The hate of return to the people.
Anyway, before I introduce the panel, please like this video and subscribe to the Movie Night Extravaganza YouTube channel. Hit that bell to get notified whenever we're streaming. Also, we are now monetized, so if you have any pressing questions during this live stream, send us a super chat, which helps me keep the show running, and which I am obligated by international law, human rights law, to answer. We also have a Patreon, patreon.com/movie night extra. All of our after parties are on there forever. We also have a new Discord and a Letterboxd HQ account, so those are 2 more places to follow along with us. Links are in the description. Okay, let me introduce the panel. Conan Neutron, host of Protonic Reversal, co-host of Movie Night Extravaganza, and frontman for Conan Neutron and the Secret Friends, neutronfriends.bandcamp.com. J. Andrew World, illustrator, book cover artist, artist for Give Them an Argument, co-host for Movie Night Extravaganza, and Bad Takes. Kristina Oakes is streaming on Twitch at Cosmopolitics, twitch.tv/Cosmopolitics. Also recently joined YouTube, she's on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Cosmopolitics. Send her some subs on Twitch, and send her a coffee. Ron Purtee is a film critic, writer, host, interviewer, and internet personality, host of The Ron Purtee Show, and on all forms of social media at I'm Uncle Ron. I, of course, am your host and the head of the Bacterian Resistance, Forrest Miller. We can no longer be silent.
Silent on this show? You gotta be kidding me.
Only if your microphone's muted. I think I picked the wrong day to dress as Clarence Worley.
Ron, it's great to have you back, man. Thanks
Thank
for
you.
coming on.
It's not White Boy Day.
I was gonna put on a Charlie Chaplin mustache, but everybody said no, that's too much.
Yeah, don't do it.
Might have been a little bit, yeah. If even I'm saying it's crossing the line, there's something to be said about that.
This is indeed a classic, and it's funny you mentioned the intro for us about the speech being like, come on, isn't that a bit much, like at the time, right?
Yeah.
Whereas now, like it's like one of the most iconic speeches like of the era in films, and still considered one of the great soliloquies of all time.
Well,
And it went very much viral during 2016.
For very good reason. Yeah,
Well,
absolutely.
one of the things to note about this time period, though, is that America really didn't want to get into the war. So,
Mhm.
and this is an
Oh, yeah.
anti-war movie, which kind of makes it. I mean, it makes it kind of ironic that that's how it was taken. But my assumption is it was taken that Charlie Chaplin is saying, like, "Come on," because at the end, like part of the speech, he's like, "As long as people will die for liberty." I think the assumption was like, "Oh, this motherfucker's trying to get us to go into the war," which I don't think was his intention. Like, it broke out. He'd already written the script when the war broke out, but like, I do think that that's how it was taken.
Yeah.
Well, it's also interesting that historically, like, you know, because we think of World War II as this defined thing, and you know, certainly there's been 100,000 pieces of media that have, in some cases, been historically accurate, in some cases, been historical wish fulfillment about what the war actually was like. But we never really talk about the lead up, and I think one of the reasons why is there's this retrograde. Kind of retroactive analysis of like, oh well, we did the right thing, and it's like, eventually, America did the right thing, but like,
I mean,
it wasn't like you were sitting there with a sword and shield on the on the horse, you know.
You had to get attacked to get
The
involved.
two biggest powers, right, that like ended up, winning the war, both the USSR and us, did not get onto the war on the side that they were on until like a later date, which makes it in both cases because those are the two biggest propaganda machines in the in the aftermath of the war. It's like in both cases, I don't think anyone was trying to talk about the lead up to the war. They were like, look at all the times we did do things, like
We're the real heroes.
The U.S. was 100% the Jewish barber after the Great War and didn't remember a goddamn thing.
Mhm.
Well, and it's funny too, because like we think about like, oh, Chaplin, like he's rightly regarded as like one of the great filmmakers of all time, right? And he is very, very funny, but without the context of when he made this, like, oh wow, that was bold of him to do that. It's like, well, kinda, yeah. I mean, it sure was, but like not exactly the way that you think it is.
yeah.
And even,
But also, motherfucker stole his mustache, so hey, fuck him.
Right?
yeah,
It's
exactly.
all about war at that point.
Ruined
And
it.
you can also argue that there was slowly but surely the beginning of Charlie Chaplin getting blacklisted in Hollywood, being forced to move, out of the country, that custody battle where he was not the father, but they're like, screw the paternity test. Look at this baby. It needs a father,
Yeah,
So,
James
like,
Woods was very stirring in that.
He was
Yeah.
silent, so he couldn't make his own defense.
Well, and so that's not to not to bury the lead, it's the first time you hear his voice, right?
Yeah.
I mean, this is like the talkies. The talkies were new at this time.
Yeah.
Well, and I tried.
I don't know.
I tried to put myself into the space where it's like, okay, Chaplin, you know him, he's the biggest star of this era, but you've never fucking heard his voice. Like, I tried to put myself into that headspace before watching it.
Right, because even I feel like even if you're not a cinephile or whatever, you still know like some scenes from Modern Times or the Gold Rush, or like you're gonna recognize it. Even if nothing else, because it's been endlessly homaged by like cartoons and like other movies and things along those lines. And this one as well. Don't get me wrong, but I feel like there's like a misunderstanding of like if you watch those movies, they're really good. They're really good, and they're good in a way that's like. I can see why, like, you know, people that don't even speak English like love these movies because it's all right there. And like, he's a complicated dude as a person for sure, but the movies themselves, it was like these are over 100 years old.
That's why I like silent films. Part of my little affiliate subathon, we watched Lon Chaney's Phantom of the Opera. You know, which was a lot of fun.
Well, and some of them are better than others too, for sure. But I think I think Chaplin's are pretty. I think the big three
iconic.
Yes, the big three for me are Chaplin, Keaton, and Lloyd.
Well, when the Simpsons parody you, and then the lawyers show up and say, the Chaplin estate doesn't approve of this.
Right. Yeah. But it's this is his most politically relevant by like a pretty large margin, unless you consider poverty.
Too on the nose.
Well, he was very non-political up until the point where he finally made Modern Times. You know, like, I mean, he had made some things that were like, you know, borderline political, but like he avoided it for like 15 years. And then Modern Times was something so explicitly political because there's an entire scene, you know, where he's leading the fucking communist strike by accident, which is a hilarious, you know,
which is amazing, right? It's because it's hilarious, and it's also like, well, he's being abjectly political, but in like a pure Charlie Chaplin
always
sort of
finds
way,
himself in a political situation in some of these movies too. He just happens to stumble upon it. He's like, whoop, okay, I might as well.
They're like,
he just wants some money to buy food, and oops, I bent over to pick up this quarter, and there's a giant communist party behind me. Oops.
Yeah. Well,
I did it again.
But then he picked up because I just watched it. He picks up like a flag that's dropped off a construction truck, and then starts going like this to try to get the fucking like truck to notice they dropped his flag. And that's when the fucking communist strike comes from behind him.
And they're like, oh yeah, follow that guy.
It's like.
Which there's seeds of that, like, you know, like Monty Python, like Life of Brian and stuff like that. I mean, it's all throughout culture, but in Modern Times is probably my favorite, honestly, of the Chaplin movies. I mean, dude, he predicted video calls.
Yeah,
you know, amazing.
And he predicted that your boss would use video calls to surveil you at work, like
make sure you're working.
Yeah, well, they did that to me for 3.5 years.
It's some crazy shit.
But that said, you know, those are all, they all have their ethos. But I think it's important to understand the context of where Charlie Chaplin was coming from with this, and kind of how, for the most part, a lot of his work didn't translate over to the newer audiences, with some exceptions being like, okay, they recut Gold Rush. And they recut the Gold Rush to like, oh, now it has sound, and it's like
him doing voiceover,
and like he basically adapted some of the older works to try to fit with the newer audiences. And honestly, the original versions work, but I get it. You're in this world that like the entire art form that you operated in changed completely, right?
Yeah, during like the silent to talkies, they tried to redo a lot of silent films, but again, a lot of these actors had not been properly trained to have the mid-Atlantic accent, so it just didn't. Those recuts and re-releases just did not work, and a lot of those actors ended up not surviving like the talkie era.
Right.
Well, I mean that's the famous joke in Singing in the Rain, where she's trained to do silent films, and her real voice is like,
I can't stand it.
Right.
I can't.
But there's like a quote. I'm trying to find it, but there's a quote by him about sound where he talks about how he didn't believe that sound. He was number one. He was very paranoid about becoming obsolete, which is what Modern Times is about, right? Like, because he's putting his own self into that. Like, technology was going to render him obsolete too, as well as every factory worker. And in you know, putting sound into his films, he felt like he was going to be rendered obsolete, and he also felt like the art of he felt like too much dialogue going into these films was going to ruin the art form. And he felt like inherently silent film had to be more artful, and I think this movie
was he
proves that-
wrong? I mean,
That's
I
why
think this
Keaton.
movie proves that doesn't have to be the case, but like,
yeah.
Well,
No,
that's why Keaton. I watched an interview with him, and that guy's voice to his face is one of the oddest combinations ever. But he said that he tried to use as few title cards as possible, so you could fit, because he wanted the visuals to tell the story, and that was kind of cool. But he's no Chaplin.
Keaton, like very late in life, was in Sunset Boulevard. He's playing cards at the table when Norman Desmond comes in.
And he was also in the movie adaptation of Funny Thing Happened All the Way to Form, and still did all of his own stunts in like 1966, which is crazy.
What a guy.
Well, I mean, so that's something I mentioned in the group chat, right? I mean, we were talking about like again the triumvirate, which is Chaplin, Keaton, and Harold Lloyd. That Keaton like did his own stunts, all of them, like while directing and acting at the same time. If you watch something, any of his films, it's crazy because you're like, that's on a set or whatever, and it's like no, look at the general. He's literally on this train and like do it like the insurance people would certainly not allow it now, but all I gotta say is
no. Jackie Chan couldn't get insured in Hong Kong because they didn't the companies didn't like it, so he had to actually get his movies insured by gangsters. And they're just like, oh yeah, we're gonna make some movies. Yeah. Chinese gangster song just like that, I'm sure.
But that was the kind of the thing is
they do.
Is that Keaton was the was like the stunt guy, right? Like they're like the action guy, and then Chaplin stuff was like the endearing, heartfelt, and funny kind of thing. Like everybody kind of had their beat for it, but it was also funny because like we were defining what movies were. You saw D.W. Griffith doing something like Intolerance, which talk about intolerance. Hey, don't get me started.
I was watching A Dog's Life, and that's like when he decided on kind of the tramp character having this like sad clown kind of thing, and he finds like the little dog. And I was watching the scene where he hides the dog in his overalls, and the tail pops out of the back because they won't let him bring the dog into the bar. And then and then he leans over like this, and it keeps hitting the drum with his tail, and everyone's like looking around. This is like one of the few times that I think they had sound. I guess they had to cut it into the actual thing. Like you'd have a band there that actually had
and a lot of silent films are like always constantly having like a new orchestra, new band, new like type of like soundtrack to kind of get with like the vibe. Because I noticed that with like watching the Phantom of the Opera. And like with Lon Chaney, his whole thing was the man of 1,000 faces. So he was able to do a lot of physical stuff, but he also did a lot of the makeup as well. But like a lot of these films have like, re-edited soundtracks where it really, each scene has like a different, like a new vibe, like almost like showing the transitioning to a new scene.
Well, a lot of what they do at UCLA has a program. I think UC's like San Diego, or like a bunch of those schools have film programs where they actually do the remastering and they actually add a soundtrack to it. And sometimes there's a book that like tells you kind of what the songs that they kind of wanted there, and then they sometimes will add color. Like there's actually The Great Dictator. They were able to add color to some things because Charlie Chaplin's brother shot this footage and in color. Like one of the few times they had
red.
Color film. Yeah, so they had like red trousers on all the on all the guards, and nobody knew that until they saw this way later when he's writing a book. They saw all this footage that he had that is actually on YouTube now. I think I downloaded it. I'm trying to find it.
And isn't it a miracle that a lot of Charlie Chaplin's films are not considered lost films? Considering but 85% of silent films are considered like lost films. It's a miracle that he has really stood the test of time.
Well, go ahead.
I was just saying real quick. It's because he allowed them to be played on television, just like Keaton. Harold Lloyd didn't. That's why people only don't remember the third guy, because his estate, they thought it would cheapen the art form, and they were right, but it also would cheapen his reputation as like the third guy that was like the three big ones. So there existed like a lot of movie nights that they would show on like the television programs where kids would watch them. New generations would be exposed to the films. So that's kind of want to give it that. Ron, jump in on that. I know you're a big.
I was just going to say, it's like you mentioned lost films, and there is. I'm working on something about House of the Devil, the first horror film from 1896, done by George Méliès, who did A Trip to the Moon. And House of the Devil was lost until I think it was 1988, because it was in some New Zealand film archive.
Wow.
And a lot of it, if you go back and you watch a lot of documentaries about early Doctor Who, it's because it gets sent out to play somewhere and then it never gets sent back, and then they just forget about it. Yeah. So
yeah, there's actually a rumor that the dictator of Zimbabwe, Mugabe, or did I say that right? Robert Mugabe. Well, anyways, Mugabe. That's it. He apparently has a secret stash of lost Doctor Who episodes, is the rumor. Don't know if that's true or not, but I am here for it.
Well, but there's a lot of them that
Road
again.
trip.
That's a perfect example because with Doctor Who, like as crazy as people believe, they just taped over them. They're like, oh, whatever, it's some dumb kid show. Nobody cares about this.
Yeah, it's like what from the 60s, right? Is that how far?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the oldest running sci-fi.
Yeah,
show,
I mean,
it debuted the day after Kennedy was assassinated.
Yeah.
The crazy thing is the BBC
And Doctor Who
lost
did it.
BBC lost the first appearance of the Beatles on Top of Pops. But the only reason why we have any footage from it is because it was in a Doctor Who episode.
Where they're like looking on the monitor at them. Yeah.
Really, Charlie Chaplin was smart. He was smart to be like, you know what? It's like Forrest mentioned that, the fear of being like obsolete or whatever, like making sure that keeping up with technology at the time. He's like, what's the best way to preserve my legacy? Let the world have access to my films, my filmography. Like that's how the Wizard of Oz got popular, because they put it on television.
Well, and that goes back to United Artists, right? So they founded that in 1919 with D.W. Griffith and Mary Pickford and Douglas Fairbanks, and the idea being that, like, hey, we're just going to make our own company to do this because we don't trust you in 1919, I might add, to keep this stuff around in print. And boy, was that ahead of the time. Yeah.
Well,
you really get a sense of it when you read, I mean, even like the Wikipedia for Charlie Chaplin, but I was really going into the archives and looking at, there's a website that has the timeline and everything. And you really get it every year, pretty much. He was switching studios because each time they would be like, well, we want more and more and more. They did not give a fuck about the quality. You know what I mean? So they were saying like, well, have these shorts, but we want this many shorts on this time schedule. And the bigger, the more farther up he kind of got, the more people were like, all right, well, we'll let you have extra time. You can take your time on it, but we're not going to make our money back unless you're making 14 a year, which is an insane pace, right? Like, do that.
Right. Well, and so another way to think about it with United Artists, right? It'd be like, that'd be the equivalent of like Christopher Nolan and Greta Gerwig and Steven Spielberg and I don't know, Martin Scorsese, like getting together and like making their own company. Yeah. Well, except for the fact that there's like not like the industry as we think of it now. But like, it was like, oh my God, it just wasn't done. But it's also like, well, are there other movies? That seems like that's all the movies, everybody.
Yeah, with speaking of, mention all those names, like I think like Martin Scorsese and Steven Spielberg, a lot of big time directors got together because Turner Classic Movie is kind of all we've had for a lot of past films, even some silent films. Right. And David Zaslav was thinking, fuck that guy as always, because he's made the worst decisions ever since taking over HBO or Time Warner in general. He was considering, cutting back, removing a lot of films that are probably not going to get reprinted and reissued or whatever from the library. And Steven Spielberg and Martin Scorsese and a few other directors got together and said, look, dude,
this is history.
Yes.
F you. Yeah.
Yes,
exactly. When it comes to Chaplin being on TV, it was a lot of his earlier shorts, like Great Dictator wasn't on TV. In fact, he got kicked out of the country, so it wasn't on TV. It wasn't even seen in the United States until the 70s again.
That's worse than Basic Cable.
Back. Yeah, it is worse than Basic Cable.
How do we make this less offensive to people?
The shorts
they literally did do this. They literally did do this. Yeah, the filmmakers kind of that you mentioned, at least some of them. I think it was Coppola, George Lucas. They made American Zoetrope, and that was kind of their version of doing something like that. It was basically their version of United Artists.
But they didn't have Douglas Fairbanks, so I mean, let's be honest. You can make Star Wars and The Godfather all you want, but if you're not the country's oldest action hero. So does that mean that Liam Neeson is the new Douglas Fairbanks?
He'll be pleased.
I don't know. Somewhere Fairbanks is like,
hurry, quickly, make another movie,
darling.
Andy, you were going to say something?
Yeah, no, I was just going to point out that I grew up in Atlanta where we got TBS like as Channel 17.
The Beastmaster station, right?
Yes, exactly. But like before Beastmaster, they were showing all the old classics, the silent films, and so I actually watched a lot of that as a small child. just because it was on TV, which is incredible. And like we just don't have that now. Like even TBS is kind of hard to get depending. It's not like a basic cable. It's
You have to watch. Believe it or not, a lot of silent films are on Tubi.
well, now, yes.
Well, sure, but that's also the ones that like went to the public domain. Like, not to put too fine a point on it, but not just Criterion, but Janus Films, which is their actual production company that releases and restores films, had done amazing work. And Criterion Channel as a streaming service, let's just charitably say it's niche compared to like something like Netflix or something along those lines, but they do a great job of curating things, bringing things in, acquiring the rights for them, and then they even started this Criterion 24/7, which is basically like, cool, so you guys invented cable, right on. Where they just like stream movies.
When are we getting the Criterion original series?
Yeah, right. Exactly.
That'll be on Netflix.
but I think that but what we're talking about are these are the exceptions that prove the rule, right? Because the idea for people like Zaslav that like there's like, oh, I only care about what's happening right now, and I only care about things that are happening right now that are successes. I don't care about anything that happened in the past. It doesn't matter unless I can exploit or remake it. And it's like, okay, great. Which is how you end up with
movie.
Yeah, right, exactly. What a horror story there. But like, you also end up with these Paramount Plus TV shows where they remake movies into these shows that like, who is it for? Well, they're keeping the IP is what they're doing. So that's why like you have these like, I don't even know why that's a show. I don't know who it's for, so on and so on.
But then some of the shows on Paramount Plus are actually like really, really good, and
some of them are
a lot
great.
of movies.
Yeah.
Like Tulsa King is fantastic.
But they're also like, there's also ones that are like needless remakes too that they show up, and it's literally just to hold on to it. It's the same way that the Corman Fantastic Four was, right? They needed to hold the rights. So
I like that movie.
Honestly, so far it's the best adaptation. So
It is. It's the most faithful. Yeah. I mean, unless J.D. Vance is behind that Doom mask, I can't tell. But
Yeah, well, sure.
Yeah,
there's no couches around.
It has its problems, but just to kind of tie back to this show, friend of the show, Jared Skolnick, did camera work on the Doom documentary about that Fantastic Four movie.
Oh, okay, cool.
That's a
I
good
saw
documentary.
that documentary. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So excited about that.
I'm a big Fantastic Four mark. Like, I'm a huge Fantastic Four mark. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe it's because it's the family I never had. But
I can't say I'm that
made of
familiar.
rock.
Pedro Pascal's great. Like I'm never mad at that guy. But like,
Did you see the when they were at San Diego? Apparently, Pedro Pascal has really bad anxiety, and when the only way he can kind of combat it is to like have human contact. So there's a part where he's standing next to Vanessa Kirby, and he kind of touches her on the arm, and she grabs his hand.
I'm so ready for that. That's why he's daddy. Okay.
And
Also,
I
he
do
looks
love
really good.
Vanessa Kirby. Like, she is phenomenal, and I can't wait to see her become a bigger star.
Yeah. Well, if anything's going to do it, it's going to be this right now. So
Yes.
Fantastic Four. So
I don't know.
we won't be able to see her a whole lot in the movie, but
Hey, everybody!
How long did it take?
Hey-o!
How long did it take for the Great Dictator to be filmed? Like
I think a year, wasn't it?
a full year?
Yeah, I think it was because they started filming it.
Well, like as the war was developing too, so they probably had
Yeah.
to like keep up with what was going on.
Here, I have something from a documentary about it. Where they talk about the actual like production process of it. This is from the documentary with Costa Gravas, the guy that did Z, and he because he was friends with Chaplin later on, and he kind of talks through the entire process of making it.
When the subject of The Great Dictator was released to the press, the reactions in Hollywood were hostile and malicious, with some dispensers of advice pointing out that his film ran the good chance of being banned in certain countries, which represented a major financial loss. Despite pressures from various quarters, including the diplomatic sphere, Chaplin made up his mind to go through with the picture and financed it alone to the tune of $2 million. His aim was clear: persuade America to take the right stand. And his only weapon, his absolute weapon, would be laughter. As he
You
went
did
into
mention
pre-production,
sauerkraut.
Chaplin conducted research and screened a large number of newsreels. He took inspiration both from Hitler's gestures and from the stagings of the fascist marches and military parades, showing a fanatical German people galvanized by the Führer.
Vor uns
The food.
liegt Deutschland, in uns marschiert Deutschland und hinter uns kommt Deutschland.
That guy.
On September 9th, 1939, 6 days after the outbreak of war in Europe, Chaplin began principal photography on his film. His brother, Sidney, filmed several production scenes on color film stock. Without these images, we would never have known that the militiamen wore red trousers.
And that okay, real quick. Apparently, Hitler had banned all prints of the Great Dictator in all occupied territories,
I wonder why.
and but his curiosity got the better of him, and he had a print shipped to him in through Portugal, and he watched it twice. But and there's no record of what he thought of it, and that Chaplin.
Did anybody look at his letterbox?
No, I don't think so.
Oh my god, that would be German
Chaplin-
gibberish.
Yeah,
Like the Fooey.
Chaplin later said, I'd give anything to know what he thought of the movie.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Totally.
You know, and it's
I mean-
easy. It's easy for people after the fact, like Mel Brooks, to go after and make a joke out of Hitler. But at the time, the man was a fucking monster, and Chaplin was basically going to war and just using laughter as his weapon. You know what I mean? So, I mean, he went to war before the U.S. did.
And
Technically.
and definitely so. I mean,
He's the real hero in the story.
Yeah, and I think that it's also it's whatever works, right? Like he got his ass.
Yeah.
Like Chaplin, like
Steal my
say-
mustache. Watch what happens, bitch.
Exactly.
Yeah, he's like the OG, memeing his way through, and Hitler's like, I'm not mad, I'm not owned, I did not fuck a couch, okay, like,
right? Exactly. Well, exactly. It's like, look, I self-describe my own band's music as big, weird rock music, right? I don't think of weird as this insult that some people do, but you cannot deny that our own personal great dictator, he hates it. The only thing he seems to hate more is being called a convict or a felon.
Well,
but it's that's good. Whatever doesn't get a rise out of him, it's working. Like, shut up, stop criticizing it and let it go, man.
Remember when he was the annoying orange was in Europe for that big summit, and he kept pushing past people so he could be on camera. All I could think about during that sequence when the Italian dictator shows up and they're trying to jockey for position of who's in front of the camera more.
Right.
It's like, oh my god,
I've seen this before.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and it's done so well in that way that Chaplin is just such an incredible, deft utilitarian when it comes to stage movement and spacing and just everything about it. I mean, look at just that little clip that had the microphones, right? Like the different gag which the mics, like in the hands of a lesser movie, that would be the scene. And it's like, no, this is just one piece to sort of underlay the rhythms of what's happening here to make sure that there's other things to kind of keep the flow moving.
And Chaplin wasn't even the first comedian to satire Hitler. The Three Stooges did it. Perfect.
Three Stooges absolutely did it.
And did anyone care?
They should have.
Well, it's good.
Donald Duck also lampooned Hitler, but I don't know when that came out.
Yeah.
It was the which one?
Donald Duck.
Oh, I don't remember about that. All I know is the
Never heard of
was
him.
called "You Nazi Spy," and
Yeah.
Mo was a dictator, and Curly and Larry were his minions.
It's surprising. People did not know that they were all actually brothers.
Yeah.
All right, so the Donald Duck one came out in 1942, 1943, pretty much.
Okay. Sounds
that was
reasonable.
after the fact. But for the question about filming it, they started in September 1939 filming it, and then they released it in October. They did everything, including post-production, by October 1940. So it was really, it was really within this time period between where the war was ramping up and they were really trying to get FDR had started trying to get the U.S. to be part of the war, but public opinion, he couldn't exactly do it the right way. He had to run again and then try to slowly build public opinion. And then Pearl Harbor.
Larry wasn't a brother, by the way. Larry wasn't a brother.
Yeah, Larry Fine was not.
It's kind of interesting though that the U.S. was like, yo, FDR, we're not getting involved in this war, and FDR is like, okay, but then we get attacked, and then he's like, now you see what I mean.
Which is why there's a bunch of conspiracy theories about FDR knew about Pearl Harbor or the original 9/11 kind of conspiracy that the government did Pearl Harbor, which is stupid, but there's a
wag the dog kind of thing. Yeah.
There's a bunch of conspiracy theories because it was they really wanted incident before.
But I mean, just to kind of paint the picture a bit, though, in December of 1940, Captain America #1 came out, and apparently
Hitler getting punched in the face.
Exactly.
Yes, and Jack Kirby was sitting up in his office, not in his office, but in the bullpen drawing, and apparently a bunch of Nazis, American Nazis, showed up, and they said to him, they asked to speak with the guy who drew Hitler getting punched. And the secretary got really nervous and told him, wait for a minute. And she didn't tell Jack Kirby until after they left. And Jack Kirby, as soon as he found out there were Nazis in the waiting room waiting for him, he starts rolling up his sleeves. He's like, where are they?
I'll be right down. Yeah, I'll be right down. And then he gets down there and they're not there anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But also, I think that it always takes somebody to kind of start the avalanche, right? To make it okay to mock something or somebody. Yeah. And it's notable that there's kind of a before and after with the Great Dictator in this. To the fact that I don't know if people today remember, but the movie Downfall, the great movie Downfall, Bruno Ganz as Hitler's last days. The memes of him making that angry, impassioned speech. Yeah. It's the Charlie Chaplin thing where it's what he's saying is nonsense, and people would just apply that as a meme template, right? Yeah. And it's cool that literally is what the Great Dictator is doing.
Yeah. And in a way, we probably wouldn't have had Mel Brooks movies like The Producers, because the whole point of that film was a post World War II satire about Hitler. And everyone was like, "Oh my God, what?" Well, and then, of course, they see drunk Hitler on the stage, and they were like, "Oh, this plays kind of funny."
Mel Brooks' Hitler impression is Charlie. He's doing an impression.
It's Charlie Chaplin's
Hitler impression.
Just when people think of George H.W. Bush and they think of an impression of him, they think of Dana Carvey's impression of George H.W. Bush, not what he actually sounded like.
I every time I think about The Producers, I always hear Mel Brooks, "Don't be stupid, be a smarty, come and join the Nazi party." And
it's that version of the thing, right? That Charlie Chaplin was able to do, where he does the entire the gibberish, but then he turns around and he's able to do his regular voice, when he's not doing the thing that was mesmerizing the German people through his intense charisma or whatever. He goes back to talking normally, and he's and he's actually in this case mild mannered and I don't know how to say it politically correctly, but he kind of has a very flamboyant way about him, is what I would say, because there's the entire sequence where he's literally he hits the ball with his butt, and he jumps up, and he's that whole sequence definitely paints Hitler in an extremely flamboyant light behind the scenes, which kind of is a way to completely undermine this machismo behind a dictator like that.
Yeah, he's just a guy who likes to jiggle balls.
Yeah, I remember watching years ago the Chaplin movie with Robert Downey Jr., and this was a big point of the movie, because this is when things start to because a lot of people were again were like, oh my God, you can't be making fun of Hitler, he's a bad guy. And of course they showed a scene where I guess they were screening the movie over and people were throwing tomatoes and throwing shit at the screen and walking out and stuff like that. So
I don't know if it got that bad, but it definitely inspired J. Edgar Hoover, who was given extreme wartime powers that he never revoked by FDR, pretty much.
J. Edgar Hoover, the gay guy, right?
To hunt down Nazis and to also hunt down communists, but he kept kind of adding that into it, and then suddenly he stopped hunting down Nazis and only. So it's a very early version of that Cold War, blacklisting. And it's also.
You mentioned blacklisting. It goes not only was Chaplin kind of kicked out of the country, but Paulette Goddard married Burgess Meredith, and then he ended up on the blacklist.
Yeah.
And there's a quote of them going to some place and people were like yelling at their car, hitting their car and saying, you know, oh, you commie, you commie, you commie. And she apparently said to him, would you like me to roll down the window and throw my diamonds at them?
She seemed like a badass. She
I think
understood
she
the
is-
assignments.
For my money, she is still to this day one of the most gorgeous women to ever grace the screen.
Mm-hmm. She doesn't get enough credit.
No.
She ended up she ended up marrying a very wealthy Swiss writer after she married Burgess Meredith. She ended up marrying like this Swiss writer and moving to Europe and she stopped acting pretty much because she's like, well, now I'm like rich enough and I've made enough investments with like, you know, ex-husband's money that I can kind of just live.
Good for her.
I think she was the only one that didn't take Charlie to the cleaners during the divorce, and
everyone else did.
They lived. Charlie and Paulette actually didn't live too far away from each other in Switzerland.
Yeah. They
she
both
was still
ended up moving
friends.
to Switzerland.
She was still friends with Sydney and Charlie Jr. So.
Yeah, and then he dealt with that paternity situation with that mentally ill woman, and
well, that's when J. Edgar Hoover got involved. J. Edgar Hoover
Mm-hmm.
wanted to persecute him for something, and when that because it clearly wasn't that he actually, you know, he ended up not being the father of that child.
But it didn't matter, FBI, Forrest. It didn't matter. They literally were like, screw the. It was what I was looking into that.
She was an adult, and they charged him with the Mann Act, which is the act, the act where it's like going over state lines with a woman. In any capacity, having sex with a woman over state lines, which is supposed to be either human trafficking. It's called like the white slavery law. It's supposed to be human trafficking, or it's supposed to be you know, like a minor that you're taking over. And she was neither. She was not a minor, and she was not like, you know, he just brought her over the line to have sex with her. It's like that's a crime in this era of the country. Like you can't bring an adult woman across state lines and have sex with her. Like that's crazy.
It's like Rudolph Valentino possibly committing bigamy when he married the Natasha woman in Mexico.
Well, Frank Sinatra got arrested for that, I believe, at some point. That's where his mugshot comes from.
But it doesn't help Chaplin, though, that his first two wives were 16 and his third wife lied about her age and told him she was 17.
Yeah, he liked them young.
Yeah, he was a little bit like Leonardo DiCaprio.
That's kind of like the only issue people bring up about Chaplin. They're like, oh, he's a great director, filmmaker, but they're like, but he liked them young girls. And I'm like,
we do hear about like half of artists. Yeah.
Yes.
At least he married them.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
Especially
people bring up the human trafficking thing, but it wasn't human. Like she literally, you know, it literally was J. Edgar Hoover trying to go after Charlie Chaplin for anything he possibly could, because first Modern Times, which is, you know, a blatantly like pro labor and like anti capitalist movie, and then this, he was like, I can't have this guy going around being literally the biggest star in the world. Like that would, you know, so they started you know, really tarnishing his reputation. Also, yeah, his last wife that stayed with him forever was 18, I think, too.
How did he figure out to like not do the Nazi symbol, but do something that's kind of somewhat similar to it? Did he just think like, oh, 2 X's or 2 crosses would?
Well, I mean, you know, they call it the double cross, and you also have the history of the Iron Cross connected to Germany. So like, there's a lot of just, you know, kind of synergy going around with that. And I think it's quite clever that they came up with this great symbol.
I just think it's weird that, you know, this German-like country is named Tomania and not like Germania or something like similar.
The first thing is a Reddit post that says Charlie Chaplin used 2 X's instead of a swastika to avoid getting demonetized on YouTube.
Smart. He predicted. He's like, I could get demonetized on YouTube one day. I gotta be careful.
First of all, there's gonna be a thing called a computer. Secondly,
I mean, he predicted a lot of stuff. So, like,
I want to bring up we had like 20 different sub conversations, so it's not going to seem very relevant. But talk about the Great Dictator and like monoculture and dealing with like real life ramifications and history and whatnot. Okay, do we need to do this? We can do this.
All right, here's a super chat. I don't know where Chaplin got the idea that the Tramp couldn't adapt to talkies. I think it was just because it was such a silent film based character.
Yeah.
Thanks for the super chat.
Yeah.
So I was thinking about like what a modern version of that would be. Remember The Interview, right? The movie The Interview that led to the 2014 Sony Pictures hack.
Yes.
That was like literally retaliation.
Oh my God. I remember watching that when it dropped. I had my friend over and we were watching it. We were like, America, fuck yeah, we're going to watch this movie. And then freaking Jim Parsons from The Office is Kim Jong-un. And then Eminem in the beginning, he's like, I'm gay. And I'm like, what is happening in this movie? Like, it's like...
It's a pretty mid movie. But like the point is it lit up a figure that was whose unimpeachability and like invulnerability as a political leader was like never in question, and therefore it could not be abided to be around, and which led to like an actual state to state intelligence attack, which is crazy.
Two things I want to point out. One is regarding that super chat is that the Tramp wanted the Tramp to be universal and not to have a distinct language.
Right. Yeah, hence going back to what we talked about earlier about it, like all those movies playing so well in like non-English speaking countries,
right,
and so on.
And
so on.
Yeah, back in 2015, there was this retired doctor from Argentina that lives near me who got a grant to show Charlie Chaplin. Yeah, he got a grant to show Charlie Chaplin films. Great Dictator was one of them, by the way. But he talked about growing up as a small child in the silent movie era, being able to watch these movies and not even realizing the guy was English,
right? Because you don't know. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, he thought he was Argentinian just like he was. And I imagine there was like a lot of that. So there you have it. That's part of the reason, I think.
Well, yeah, like he had like he did like white makeup and then like black eyeliner and did his brows and put the mustache on. So
I mean, he just looks like otherworldly. He doesn't look like any like race or ethnicity. It just looks like the little tramp.
Which is very funny when they started moving away from the silent movie era, and he would allow everyone else in his movies just keep their regular, their regular face, not do the theatrical makeup or anything. Which every silent movie person kind of did that vaudevillian style makeup. But as they moved away from that, he would just have regular people that he was interacting with as the Tramp. And then he would be like, he'd be like this almost, as you said, like otherworldly figure running through whatever the thing is, where everyone else just kind of is relatable in that, like they're usually
like
just
MC Cool Cat. They're Paula Abdul.
The white makeup and the eyes.
It's not like that at all. But thank you, Andy.
Yeah.
Ron, what was that second point you were trying to make?
To even compare the James Franco, Seth Rogen, what was it, the interview, to even put it in the same sentence as the Great Dictator is almost like shitting on Chaplin.
Well, I'm not saying that I'm not saying they're equivalent movies. I'm saying from like national and international socio-political response dealing with like real life events. The only modern example we have of that is that unfortunately very mid movie.
But
it does still happen.
The white makeup with the black eyeliner and everything, that was just standard silent film makeup because they had to showcase, they had to, it's hard to explain, but what I mean.
We all know that.
It's the same thing they would do on the vaudeville stage because they'd want somebody in the back row to be able to see the person's face. And then they'd also do, other races too. But, when it was like a white character, they would do the white makeup and then the whatever pattern on their face because they wanted people in the back seats because vaudeville was a very egalitarian style of theater to be able to
have
see.
Those very, very thin eyebrows on those women.
Yeah. Yeah. But it kind of comes from that like Japanese, like that style of theater too.
Yeah. Now, one thing about this film, obviously, with I remember I think we watched it in school because I feel like when you learn about World War II, I feel like maybe watching The Great Dictator should be a thing, not The Boy in the Striped Pajamas, because a lot of that's kind of like pure fiction and like not really how shit works during World War II. But but like that's the one thing I remember watching it. I was like, you guys are gonna love this, and they were like, I can't believe he got away with making fun of Hitler. I'm like, he kind of did.
Yeah, kind of got away with it. Yeah, like,
I'm like, it was the beginning of his that like people were like, dude,
Hitler didn't come after him. The United States did for some reason.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, England and Germany both did too because they both had diplomats in the United States, and they were hoping for like a short war, a very short war, like not
very
war.
Short.
So I think both German and British diplomats were kind of upset that Chaplin was able to make this in America. Which
Yeah, and
Chaplin
maybe
knew Churchill, so I don't know why.
I wonder, if Pearl Harbor had happened, would he imagine if Charlie Chaplin had like delayed making the movie for some reason, and Pearl Harbor had happened. Would you think he would be able to make the Great Dictator in that like time span?
Yeah,
I think he would have done anyway.
FDR invited him to the White House to give that final speech on the radio. And then because he was someone who kind of championed liberal and left-leaning causes after this, he ended up knowing Eleanor Roosevelt pretty well too, and Roosevelt's whole family. They invited him to actually give that speech, which was the most unpopular part of the movie when it came out because people were really trying to avoid going into the war in the first place. He invited him actually to give the speech on the radio. I mean, it's a very FDR-esque speech, I feel like.
Now, what about more? Because we're obviously talking about Charles Chaplin, but the barber character, it's what does he end up symbolizing in this movie?
I mean, he kind of ends up symbolizing Chaplin in a way. When he made that famous quote where he was like, Hitler was the madman, I was the clown, but it could have easily been the other way around. It's so easy to have somebody in one of these things that has the same mustache as Hitler, looks like Hitler. There's another To Be or Not to Be, which is remade by Mel Brooks later on, but that movie also kind of has a character that looks a lot like Hitler,
doppelganger type of thing.
And that was Carol Lombard's last movie before she died in a plane crash.
So it's multiple kind of.
I did not know that.
But for his whole life, right? Like Chaplin, or not his whole life, but because Hitler, he didn't know who Hitler was for most of his life. But for this entire period when Hitler's on the rise, including in 1931 when he went to Berlin and everybody.
Hey, did you realize you look like Adolf Hitler? Hey, do you realize you look like Charlie Chaplin?
Yeah. And they're born 4 days apart. He was born on April 16th, and Hitler was born on 4/20, which everybody.
Yeah. Well, but it is worth noting that there were other attempts that were before. I mean, Fritz Lang made a film that was more or less lampooning Hitler in his way, making him out to be like this monster with Thousand Eyes of whatever it was. I can't remember what the name of it was, but it's fine. But the reason why it worked is because it wasn't just because it was a good movie. It wasn't because it was Charlie Chaplin's, because it happened right then at that time when movies were moving towards talkies, and it's the first time you get to hear Chaplin speak, right? And it was that movie at that time. I think if you change any aspect of that, then, Chaplin might have had a completely different late period career, for one thing, including being able to actually make more movies beyond Limelight later on, and again, remixing the Gold Rush later on to a new audience. Yeah, but it's a confluence of events, I would say.
I remember when I first heard about The Great Dictator, I was really young, and I thought it was just gonna be another silent Chaplin film. When I heard it, I was like 9. I was like, oh my God, he can talk.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
It disturbed my kids because we had just seen, like I said, I took them to see the showings of those films back in 2015. And my oldest was just disturbed that they were talking in the Great Dictator.
Right.
It's this is a Chaplin film. We expect silent and then
a testament of Dr. Mabuse. That was the name of the Fritz Lang film. That's right.
Yeah. And so my kid is a Chaplin purist.
I mean, there's
real. I only like their first record vibes. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
You see the same kind of determination to stay with. I mean, as his brothers are literally I'm not fucking staying with this. The Harpo Marx character is a lot like Chaplin's tramp throughout all of those films, and he stays as this silent vaudeville figure. And people were shocked that he could talk too. I mean, I've told the story before about my grandpa or my great grandpa or whatever was a doctor, and Harpo Marx came to him and he's like, where do I know you from? And he's like Marx, Marx Brothers or whatever. And he's like, oh, and he's like, which one are you? And he's like, Harpo, because he had to look at his rash or something like that. And he's like, you can talk,
his book, which by the way I highly recommend. It's
Harpo Speaks,
very good.
Right?
Harpo Speaks. It's really good. I highly recommend it. I got it from the library 20 years ago, but
I never returned it.
No, I returned it.
Like that episode of Married with Children where he had never returned that book for 30 years.
I'm pretty good about returning all my library stuff. Thank you very much, Ron Purtee.
It's good you say that because a lot of librarians are tuning in right now.
That's right.
Exactly. It's our main constituency, actually.
Yeah.
Credit where
so
credit's due. Let me give a shout out to Canopy, by the way. Moving Extravaganza brought to you by Canopy. Great service. All you need is a library card, and you can see all kinds of great stuff that's out of print. You know, stuff that's like maybe harder to find, so on and so on.
Yeah, I found Outland there, which I had been trying to watch for years, and nobody had it. So I was very excited.
Having fun isn't hard when you have a library card.
I love Arthur, but again, I also grew up with fucking Steven Crowder as the voice of the brain, so it kind of tainted my love of that show.
So this is talking more about the screenplay, which 300-page long screenplay, which might be why it took an entire year to film, and I'm sure they cut out a lot of parts.
It all began with a love story. It was during a long trip to Asia 4 years earlier that Chaplin secretly married Paulette Goddard, his co-star in Modern Times. The young woman was then 25 and was accompanied by her mother. Paulette Goddard, whose real name was Marion Levy, was Chaplin's third wife. Chaplin was already thinking about his next film, in which he again wanted to cast Paulette Goddard. But again, I was faced with the same depressing question, said Chaplin. Should I make another silent picture? I had thought of possible voices for the tramp, whether he should speak in monosyllables or just mumble. But it was no use. If I talked, I would become like any other comedian. Chaplin spent the entire summer of 1938 at Pebble Beach, a residential area for millionaires near Carmel, 100-odd miles south of San Francisco. There, he struck up a friendship with Tim Durant, a wealthy young man, and Dan James, an aspiring writer and ardent Marxist who suggested that he work with Chaplin on a script. In search of a story, Chaplin remembered an idea his friend Alexander Korda, the British producer and filmmaker, had suggested to him in which he would play two roles, Hitler and the tramp. This would allow Chaplin to hang on to his silent character and at the same time settle some scores with his rival, the man who had stolen his mustache. The thief in question, Hitler. In 1939, Hitler was 50 years old, the same age as Chaplin.
What's incredible is that he wrote the script in 1937 to 38. Well, at that moment, Hitler wasn't only the great hero for Germany because he had saved Germany from communism, since the German Communist Party was the largest in Europe, it had 20 million members, but also because he had totally revived the economy. He gave everybody work. And there were problems virtually everywhere in the world, especially in America after 1929. It was thought that it would take a man like Hitler everywhere to save the world, to save the economy, to save the world from communism. So he was the great hero. And at that moment, Charlie Chaplin decided he would go with this film after all, which means that he had seen right. He was a visionary. He saw what was going to happen later.
For me, the funniest thing in the world, said Chaplin, is to ridicule imposters and conceited people in high places. The greater the imposter you take on, the better your chances of making a funny picture, and it would be harder to find a bigger imposter than Hitler. He was the best target in the world for satire and mockery.
The silence around him, while Charlie Chaplin, filmmaker and clown, in a certain way, looked into history, and he saw the future. While the great spiritual and political leaders of the world couldn't see it and remained on Hitler's side, considering Germany a Christian nation. So Hitler wasn't to be meddled with. And from another angle, they saw it as a conservative country with which they could do a lot of business, which is what all big companies did. So hands off Hitler.
For the first time in his career, Chaplin sat down to write a real screenplay. The script of The Great Dictator would be 300 pages long. The film is set in an imaginary country, Tomania, which comes under
Adenoid Hinkle. That has to be like one of the greatest character names in the history of
Totally not some anagram for like Adolf Hitler or anything. No.
I hate that the whole Jewish barber thing reminds me of that Kanye quote where he's like, I'm not going to say what kind of religion or race or whatever the doctor was. And he's like, he was a Jewish doctor. And in my head, I just imagined Kanye doing the same thing, but he was a Jewish barber.
Also, the whole we need a leader like Hitler around the world. It just makes me think of Candace Owens. Like the biggest mistake Hitler did was not, keeping, not keeping it in Germany. And I'm like,
that's the biggest mistake. Wow. Okay.
yeah. Not the fact that he committed a Holocaust.
Talking like Stan Laurel.
It's true. It was a different time. I mean, ever
Well,
Roosevelt speak?
They were on the same troop, I believe, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, they were together on the vaudeville circuit before they got into filmmaking. Both of them, in the British to American vaudeville circuit.
Yeah, it's really
for, Fred Kernow, I believe. What's that his name? I forget how you say it.
I think so. Yeah.
It's kind of amazing how so many silent film stars started on vaudeville, on the stage.
Well, that's
and they
where
were
they
able
got
to
them all
translate
from.
that.
That's where they got all of them. Like literally, they would go out in the vaudeville circuit, and the same way they do with SNL, where they go out to comedy clubs and kind of scout talent. They would do that on the vaudeville circuit. You got the woman that was pretty much Charlie Chaplin's mentor. She was hired because she was the one person who wasn't from the vaudeville circuit. And they're like, all right, we need some new blood to come, from a different place, because literally everybody that they were hiring at that point was from that same vaudeville circuit. It was kind of doing the same style of comedy.
Right. How weird is it to think though that Stan Laurel was Charlie Chaplin's understudy?
That is pretty crazy.
Well, don't they have the same mustache?
Maybe, who knows? They could have shared it. Things were tight back then.
Exactly. But Charlie, it's my turn for the mustache.
Hey, you told me last week that I could have the mustache this time. It's crazy though, because Charlie Chaplin's mom went kind of insane from syphilis. And he and his brother were able
Some things
to
never go out of style.
Yeah. So she went insane from syphilis, and then his father was dead. So he was one of those young little Victorian style children that would just go on the vaudeville circuit because they're I don't really have parents. So they would jump into the theater or whatever. There's such a trope, I feel like, that comes out of the whole Charlie Chaplin story. Both that and his second tour of America, the second time he's here, some guy running up and going, "Sir, we got rid of art," because I guess the guy was quitting. That was their big star at the New York Film Manufacturing Company. He's our big star is going out, and we need somebody to come in and join our film company. Our big star is leaving. Can you do it, sir? And he's like, well, I've never acted on film before. And he's like, oh, you'll be fine. Come on with me. And it's I feel like that's every fucking biopic about someone who gets into the cinema. It's the Charlie Chaplin story.
Right. But in this case, it actually did happen. It's a tired trope, and that's one of the things that define that.
That's a trope for every silent film star from back in the day. Because again, it really didn't. There was no when they filmed these silent films, you had the director telling you what to do the entire time, because again, there was no sound and whatever. So they were able to go big or go home with acting. And there has been so many videos explain how acting, the skill has changed from from silent to old Hollywood to the new Hollywood era to now, which is very fascinating to watch. It's wow, it's you're listening to people finally abandon the mid-Atlantic accent by the 50s and early 60s. It seems, unless you were someone who grew up in the old Hollywood era, you still clung to that accent. But Charlie Chaplin was lucky because he already had a British accent, so they're you're fine.
Right. Yeah. He already sounded posh.
Yeah.
I mean, they get into that so much in Sunset Boulevard, where that kind of acting is completely gone out of style, and her fucking crazy eyes, Norma Desmond's, literal eyes are popping out of her head the entire time, and you're so ready to be oh my god, I could tell she's crazy just by those eyes.
I got the good crazy eyes.
It's those kinds of eyes with the theatrical makeup that really pop. That that stopped being as much of a thing as soon as sound was developed, because you could build the characters in different ways, and you could argue whether that's less or more artistic, but
that's why it was important for films like Singing in the Rain and Babylon and all these documentaries to explain how difficult it was for a lot of silent film stars to transition into talkies.
By the way,
they actually had to act.
Buster Keaton was slapped as FDR. I think I'd like to see that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my god, awesome. Him falling out of the chair all the time.
Yeah, in a
physical comedy FDR. That's great. What's funny is like I feel like in recent years, like the one that everyone seems to be focused on is LBJ. Like everyone is like, because you have
that
what's
deep
his face?
Southern accent.
Sure, but I mean, like I feel like I've seen like multiple portrayals of LBJ recently, and it's
Gary
like,
Oldman
okay.
and
Well,
Oppenheimer.
there was that one year where it was multiple. It was the Rob Reiner one. They had another.
The
They had
Butler.
Woody Harrelson playing him. They had like all these different versions of fucking
Bryan
LBJ.
Cranston.
Yeah,
Too much,
that was
too
weird.
much LBJ.
Too much.
Everything was like Lyndon Baines Johnson, like just taking over. That was weird.
Too much LBJ.
Well, they had to take out his pants because apparently he was packing.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like that dude at the Olympics.
I love that phone call of LBJ where he's like, I need you to tailor my pants from my from down in my thing to my bunghole. Can you do that?
Can you imagine Charlie Chaplin?
He does use the term bunghole, and I appreciated that about him.
Charlie Chaplin finding to do like a strong Southern accent, but again, a lot of people, most movies did not really deal with like Southern, like really, everyone had to sound like they were sort of British, but not really.
Well, I mean, there was the Gone with the Wind.
Yeah, but it still sounded very like
There was more theatrical than it was
like Southern Belle, like like higher class Southern, but not like lower class like redneck type. But then again, that wasn't really a thing back then.
Well, it was also like it was more theatrical, the delivery too. So like you had to kind of enunciate, which not like say a boomhauer from King of the Hill.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what.
I just always think of what Chaplin's career could have been had he not been blacklisted. Like, I mean, Una, his wife, was wanting to become an actress, but her father was like, no, you're not. And also too, you're Charlie Chaplin's my age. You're not marrying him. She basically renounced her U.S. citizenship, became a mother of 8 for him. I mean, her daughter Geraldine became an actress. She played her grandmother in the Chaplin movie. Her daughter
Also was the
Una.
crazy fucking British lady in Nashville.
Yeah, she was also. I gotta look up because she was in
his granddaughter Una was getting shouted out earlier in the comments for. I mean, she's in like a bunch of stuff. She's in like Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
She's in like it's all over the place. And it's funny because if you look at if you know and you see, you're like, oh, I can totally see it, especially in the eyes. Like you especially.
She was in Dr. Zhivago.
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah, and the mustache. It's just really weird that she does the mustache.
All Chaplin children were born with the mustache.
It is crazy though. Like every picture of him out of the makeup without the mustache, you really see his age. But then when he puts the makeup on and he has the mustache on and move, like even here where he's 50 in The Great Dictator, like 50 or 51 or 52 by the time it came out. Like, but he still has. I mean, he's spry. Maybe it's because he's that spry as like a middle-aged, middle-aged man.
What year does Limelight come out? Because that's first of all, so that's 52. So that's 12 years later. It's the only movie he ever did with Buster Keaton.
Oh, what could have been, man?
Yeah,
they could have been such
that
a
was the Expendables of their day.
The fact that people never thought in Hollywood to have these two legends do like buddy cop movies together, but like
I know.
But I mean, one of the things is that once you're in one of those, vaudeville style duos and movies, like they keep you kind of in that. I think Charlie Chaplin was someone who never really who went out of his way not to have. He had his own kind of stage thing, like stage people around him, and he kind of went out of his way not to be like a buddy because there's just so many buddies, and so many of them ended badly, right? Like Laurel and Hardy, and like.
I feel like he's like whatever, like he's like the contempty, like he's the one that's always like seen as like contemptible for some reason. People are always annoyed by him or want to like do ill to him,
Well, when it comes to Keaton and Limelight, Keaton's career was basically over at that point, and Chaplin gave him a role because he needed some work.
Well, yeah, and it's about like a fading comedian and basically a despondent ballet dancers, and they're trying to like find some purpose in life, which one can imagine that not a little bit of that was like pulled from reality, right?
I wonder.
Well,
something
that I saw that I looked up. There was an article on Charlie because there's like a Charlie Chaplin website that keeps all of his movies. They put all of his movies on YouTube. Like it's pretty cool. But they have a whole archive, and one of their articles was about Charlie Chaplin as composer. whether it's something like
Yeah.
Limelight, which he's listed as the composer, or as far back as City Lights, where he put the score together.
Yeah, I mean, he did all of it, right?
Yeah.
And like from top to bottom. I mean, he was sitting there like, being in the scene, being in the center of the scene, directing every piece of it, including like the vehicles and stuff like that. Like from top to bottom, the man had a vision, right? He was one of the original, like when you think of like the word auteur, which has been radically overused for modern movies, if you ask me. Absolutely, definitionally Chaplin.
Yeah, he's what the auteur is supposed to be. He puts himself into the center of it. He's a director. And he was learning all of that on the job, pretty much. Like nobody was,
film was new, so
it was a new medium. There was no. He was making the rule book as he went.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I love Joan Crawford. When she first got into Hollywood, she was like, okay, if I want to be a star, I gotta take this seriously. So I'm gonna, she befriended the crew members. She learned how every type of the grips, everything worked. So that at times that she could just direct herself on camera. Like that is the dedication. I feel like that's kind of missing for some actors today, because then you end up getting so like hoity-toity and better than. But no, you gotta get friendly with the crew and know the people and familiarize yourself with every aspect of filmmaking. I think.
I hear Christian Slater actually does that. So shout out to Christian Slater. Come on the show.
You mentioned
Christian Slater,
you mentioned Chaplin as a composer. I mean, the songs like in the chat, "Smile." I mean, that became a huge hit for Nat King Cole.
Yeah. And Michael Jackson was a big fan of Charlie Chaplin. Like he even did his own. He did the whole Tramp thing too, and he actually did a cover of "Smile" that his brother.
Well, he also did like white makeup.
Yeah, well, he had to. That's where he started wearing the white glove for. Jermaine Jackson sang the song at the at his the funeral that got televised or whatever. So I'm like, I've always had a deep connection to that song since I was a child. So from Nat King Cole's version, so I can't listen to that song without crying.
There's so what I was gonna say though, the City Lights thing, right? A lot of the music in that is obviously older music that was put together, classical music that he kind of curated, I guess, for his own movie. And so people gave him all right, buddy, you're a composer, right? You're a composer the same way that. Well, I mean, in some ways, it's the same way that Hans Zimmer is a composer, but people don't recognize that same thing. But someone who has other people play the music and then curates it pretty much.
Yeah.
And when he finally put the stuff together for The Great Dictator, when he finally put the stuff together for Modern Times, and then his later stuff, people were like, okay, he really is composing a lot of this himself. He would have a piano, and he also had a violin at one point. I think he had a cello too. He would try to put out melodies or something. I guess he was very bad at playing the violin, and he was in the studio with a bunch of other people, and they hated that he would bring out the violin at night. His creative process was at night, and you go, and they were starting to get really fucking angry that because he didn't know he taught himself how to play all these instruments too.
Yeah. Well, I think he taught himself everything.
I don't have enough time to do that.
top to bottom. And it's weird that it's kind of come back around with the era of DIY and technology having caught up in so many ways that people have the ability to do a lot of those things on their own now. That now it's more fashionable to do it again. But again, it's interesting to see that bell curve, because for the longest time it's no, those are different jobs. You don't do that. That's not a thing that you do. And it was just that was not something that the rule book that was being created allowed for. In that same way, the idea of Buster Keaton doing all his own stunts, which he literally broke his neck doing, by the way, and it was an injury that he had didn't discover the extent of till 30 years later. But they were
it was fascinating watching a funny thing happen on the way to Forum, and because I was looking at, I remember watching, I was like, is that Buster? Because Buster Keaton has a very distinctive face, those eyes, very distinctive, and so I was like, is that Buster Keaton? Why is he rolling around with a barrel around? He literally was going around on the barrel, going down a hill. And I'm like, oh my God, why is he doing those stunts when he's 70?
The man invented parkour.
Yes.
Also, when it comes to that, the comment about the Wells Chaplin feud, I mean, Wells gave Chaplin the idea for Monsieur Verdot. So I don't know how much of an actual feud they had.
Yeah. Although Wells did student controversy, so who knows?
Well, Wells was born in controversy.
Right.
Yeah.
He was born into it.
He was born. He was born in Kenosha.
I know he was. Yeah.
Wait, controversy, Wisconsin? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, exactly.
Oh,
That's what I call Kenosha, at least, especially when I'm driving through it. I'll roll my window down and shake my fist and say, "Damn you, controversy!"
I love that. I love the music being diegetic. Like I love the whole like diegetic like discourse.
I hate that fucking word so much.
Yeah, it reminds me of being in film classes when I had to put stuff together, and they're like, all right, diegetic sound, non-diegetic sound. A lot of it is diegetic though, because they have the scene where he fucking plays the piano, and they have, some of it's not like I think it's non-diegetic when he's dancing to he gets hit in the head and he's dancing to the and like and I don't know what the globe dance is necessarily supposed to be, but like,
I think that was just Chaplin being Chaplin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm saying, I don't know what the globe, like, I don't know if he's supposed to actually, like, I feel like you're listening to, like, almost like the strained rhythms in his head when he's doing the globe dance. Like, it's his fucking dream.
Let's, before we start winding things down, I think we do need to give, like, a special, I don't know, shout out's the right term, but a discussion towards the final speech, which, again, the reveal of, like, okay, like this is the guy that you've known in some cases at the time, people like you're entertained by your whole life, and like you're finally hearing him speak, and this is like what he's saying. I got
something for the final speech.
Lovely.
I actually have been watching millennials react to the final speech, and they had no idea who Charlie Chaplin was. And
is that on the React channel?
No, there was more than just the React channel.
Okay, because I think I saw something like that.
Yeah, and it was Smile because my heart is broken.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a big thing where it's like a trend of millennials reacting to Charlie Chaplin's final speech. I feel like people are really bankrupt for content for a while there.
Mm-hmm.
To have filmed it in a single take,
YouTube
then done
is
cutaway
bankrupt
shots
for
of the balloon,
content.
which rises and falls, all that in a single take up till there, which allows him to go to a cutaway shot. Here, he's not hit.
Pretty great. Pretty great. I love especially the line, "Dictators free themselves, but they enslave the people." Like that, the whole last movement.
Yeah, well, I feel like it's a very FDR-esque speech, but like maybe preceding the FDR of World War II by like a year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, yeah, like look, let us fight for a world of reason, a world where science and progress will lead to all men's happiness.
Yeah,
great. Where do I sign up? Sounds good. So yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we talked about Hitler's Letterboxd earlier, but thankfully he didn't have one. But of course, Letterboxd is a social media site.
I wonder what would have been on there. He's only reacting to movies like making fun of the Nazis, and he's like, very, very bad. 9, 9,
or
9,
all the
9.
Nazi propaganda films that were made under his approval.
Oh yeah. His top 4 would definitely have Triumph of the Will. He got
it's all Leni Riefenstahl. See, Hitler was.
I mentioned D.W. Griffiths earlier. Come on, Birth of a Nation. Yeah.
The nation must be birthed.
But Letterboxd is a social media site for film lovers to talk out with to each other about the movies they love, maybe the movies that they didn't love, maybe the movies that they were inspired by the final speech of. And of course, all of this is a bottom-up democracy. Everyone gets to chime in and opine. And it's best done succinctly. You don't take too long with it. You don't work on your Type 5 in front of the brick wall of the Comedy Store. That's right. One shot, one life, one kill. If you're like the little tramp, don't talk unless you got something to say.
One life, one kill.
These are Letterboxd one-liners for The Great Dictator. Let's go. Sound in cinema had to be invented just for Chaplin to make that final speech. It's true.
I feel like, they talked about in that thing that it's like, the speech that the Jewish barber would have made. But I feel like it's just kind of Chaplin's philosophy. Like he... Oh my God, Kristina was at this Nazi rally.
Dude really did look a lot like Mussolini too, by the way.
Yeah, it's kind of weird.
Well, he was cast for that. There has to be some actor out there that looked like Mussolini, right?
Oh,
Like,
definitely. Yeah, there's a lot of them.
It's probably a lot of people's uncles.
I love that the name for Italy though is bacteria.
That's so like not Italy. Like that's like I thought they would go for something that sounded like Italy, but I guess not.
No,
Bacteria.
you get bacteria when it's undercooked.
But I like the idea of like I feel like it's a Chaplin-esque joke that off the top
We're
of
gonna
my
hear from the
head.
Italian Defamation League about that Andy comment.
But I feel like off the top of my head, like the first thing I thought of was the Bacterian resistance. You're like, oh, we're the Bacterian resistance, fighters.
You heard of this Hitler guy? Seems like a potential problem down the road.
No, I haven't, but I have heard of this Hinkle guy.
We need to have our adenoids removed.
To be a fly on the wall when Hitler saw this. Yeah, man.
He must
Do you
have
think
been.
Hitler- Do you think
I
Hitler
actually-
had to see it a second time because he got so enraged the first time that he stormed out?
I actually have that poster on my wall next to my Dawn of the Dead poster.
He probably was so. I would have loved to.
That's actually the scene in Downfall. That's what he's mad about. He's not mad about the Allies fighting the bunker. He's mad. He just saw the Great Dictator fight.
Really,
He's all pissed about it.
because like the beginning of that scene is obviously he's whispering to him. He's like, "Sir," and then it's like, "Well," he's like, "Sir, Charlie Chaplin has just dropped another film," and he's like, "Yes, is it good? No, sir, it's making fun of you." No, 999.
Another film mocking you has hit the second tower. Like,
When Charlie Chaplin has sex in an apartment within walls, the moans are drowned out by classical music and loud boings.
Boink, boink, boink. And then I feel like there's a clown horn in there too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's all the good noises. Man stayed quiet for years and dropped the hardest monologue ever.
He really
Yeah.
did though.
Facts.
It's a crazy speech.
probably the best monologue in a film of all time, honestly.
It's up
He
there.
picked up the mic and then dropped it.
And walked off.
It's pretty funny that he has like two big speeches in this. One of them is just random fucking German sounding gibberish. And the
Yeah.
other one is just the hardest monologue of all time.
Like super eloquent. Yeah. When you're afraid of being canceled, remember that Chaplin made this film criticizing war in the middle of the war.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's the thing that people didn't pick up on, though. I think why they got mad. They just assumed that it was Chaplin telling them to go to war.
Yeah.
It's one of the folly of war the entire time.
I mean, some people viewed it as being like pro-Hitler for some reason. I'm like, dude, watch the movie, read the room.
They're like, he dressed up like Hitler. He must love Hitler.
Yeah.
Exactly. What are they from this year? Anyway, why didn't the Italians just overthrow Mussolini by throwing mustard in his face?
Dude, that food fight scene though, it's so fucking funny.
Or some marinara sauce.
The other bit that's really funny
Yeah,
is
that
when
would
they
get 'em.
keep missing each other with the Heil and the lol.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? It's like
That's pretty great. It's classic food fight stuff. I'll bet that's exactly how Hitler would have bounced a balloon on his booty cheeks.
at the end of that scene, I just noticed at the end of the thing when the balloon pops and he goes down on the desk to be like, he's upset that his balloon popped. He gives one last final booty pop in that.
Yeah, exactly. Just one for the road. Yeah.
Booty. He's actually, Charlie Chaplin was the first person to ever twerk.
Exactly.
Exactly. He was a groundbreaker in many
Big
ways. Exactly.
Twerk.
So-
Sorry,
somebody
I
find
didn't,
his Wikipedia and update it, please. Thank you.
like I didn't know that
Don't
the
actually
twerk
update his
was,
Wikipedia.
Don't do that.
You're like I didn't know that the twerk was first done by Hitler.
Exactly. You're doing a Nazi dance. There you go. If Germany won the war, Hitler would have killed Chaplin so hard for this.
Oh God,
but
yes.
He already hated Chaplin for just existing.
Yeah,
Like it's so fucking funny that he showed up in Berlin in 1931. Like if you look at those crowd shots, it's such a big crowd around.
oh, it's
Chaplin.
crazy.
Yeah,
Hitler was
And then
jelly.
the Nazis were so upset by that specific thing. Like one thing that happened on a day, one time, right? They're so mad about it that literally 3 years later they wrote it in a book. They're like that dirty little Jewish acrobat. It's like the guy's
And
never
that's why
told-
he went after
First of all,
Hitler
he's
because
not
of that
actually
book.
Jewish, but
So-
secondly, fuck you.
Trump feels the same way about when attention's taken away from him.
But I mean, that's why the Great Dictator really gets, these kinds
Timeless.
of figures that are like authoritarian figures that really do thrive on this attention, and the attention really is what gives them momentum in that way. And when they stop getting attention, or when things are distractions are gone, everyone's like this country's kind of shit. Like this, it gets it perfectly. It hits it right on the head with that.
So can we go to a Trump rally and remove him and just put a giant basketball there, and it will get better response?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Those are the Letterboxd one-liners for The Great Dictator. Please follow our Letterboxd HQ account at Movie Night Extra. We're posting stories of all the great movies that we cover on this very show and lots of extra bonus content, things along those lines. Follow for all your Letterboxd needs at Always Flacco over there. The Bacterian Resistance is login stuff on
Pretty good,
Letterboxd. Right? Pretty good. Yeah. And you went on a bit of a Chaplin binge, I saw, so that's engaging and enticing. So follow him for seeing what that is all about. I'm just a janitor, aka Conan Neutron, and I am doing the highbrow, the midbrow, the Populous Fair. Follow me along for the Criterion Challenge, which I am way back on track for, and film school dropouts and things along those lines. And I will be on there. Kristina logged in and logged a couple of films. It's this one and Deadpool and Wolverine, which I think is quite the contrast, but we're covering both of them this month. So there you go.
Back to back.
Back to back at Kristina. So if you want to follow
you
her,
didn't pay attention to my name down there.
Sorry, Wiener Schnitzel. Sorry, my bad. I was just so amazing.
I also should have said sauerkraut. By the way, I do not. As someone, people are like, "Oh my god, you're German. You must love all the foods." No, I do not. The pancakes or the potato pancakes and the schnitzels and the German potato salad is all I like.
What do you call a grumpy German?
What?
A sauerkraut.
I was right there.
Hassan went on a full rant about it one time, and I was like, "Yes, let this man cook. German food sucks."
I do not endorse that opinion, but okay. Janitor World Banana is right about now too. Logging all the weird stuff.
It's so fucking funny that the guy immediately tries to blame that he slipped on a banana. When there's that scene and like it's in the German, whatever. He's like banana. He's like banana. And he does the fucking bit where he throws his mouth off.
It's pretty great. He's logging all the weirdest stuff so you don't have to. Maybe so you can, not for me to say one way or the other, but he is doing it. So follow along with our friend Andy on right about now too on Letterboxd. Uncle Ron is just Ron Purtee, his name on Letterboxd, and is an excellent account to follow. I know you two have seen Deadpool and Wolverine recently.
I have. We talked about it.
Yeah, man. So good stuff. Let's do the plug.
If you're watching us on YouTube, please like and subscribe, and then hit the bell to get notified whenever we're streaming. And we'd humbly request that you watch the video to the end, because it helps us with the algorithm and helps more film fans to discover the show. We're also monetized. If you want to get your chat questions definitely read on stream, you can always send us a super chat, which will help us keep the show going. Every cent helps. If you're watching on Twitch, you can gift us a free sub on Amazon Prime with your Prime membership, but getting subs on Twitch is always appreciated, and it helps to follow us on there as well. We also have an audio feed, which is available wherever you download podcasts, if you prefer to listen to podcasts rather than watch the stream. That's updated usually the same day we stream, but watching on YouTube and Twitch is the best way to get the show first, live as it happens. If you want to support us with a monthly donation and get access to all of our after parties forever, which go patron only after we do them, you can become a patron at patreon.com/movie night extra. Link is in the description for that. It really helps us keep the show going since we do have some expenses to make this happen. We also have a Discord community. Link is in the description for that. We sometimes watch movies we cover on there. We get into conversations about everything from film to TV shows to related podcasts. We even have a Discord channel for memes. It's really fun on there. You can find us on all the social media platforms: Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky, Twitter, and Threads. You connect with us on all of those. Talk to us. We'd love to hear from you. Lastly, we recently made a TikTok at Movie Night Extra where we're putting up short form clips from the episodes. Okay, passing this to Conan so he can tell you about his music and this week's Protonic Reversal. Conan, who's on Protonic this week?
Yeah, so Chris Haskett of Rollins Band episode probably is out in everyone's feeds right now as we speak. I actually taking the week off because I streamed and podcasted for 9 days in a row with no break, and I was ready to throw the computer out the window. but I'm doing 2 Protonic Reversals next week.
What you have to do is you have to go up like you're doing Mount Doom and get to the top and then drop your laptop
and drop it into the volcano. Yeah, but I have 2 next week. The entire Upright Forms, Nick Sake's band, all three of them are coming in and talk about their great new record. And then Alan Johannes, the amazing Alan Johannes of 11, This Is It, Queens of the Stone Age, Desert Chestnuts, PJ Harvey's band, so many others is returning. And he's a treasure, and that's going to be a treat. Of course, neutronfriends.bandcamp.com for the music. And a bunch of tour dates coming up. Nothing close by. We got next month San Francisco, San Pedro, San Diego, all the Sands, and Phoenix. I should call it San Phoenix.
and Dan Quentin when you rock too hard and they throw you in jail.
Right, exactly, for rocking too hard, which is an actionable offense, actually.
Under Gavin Newsom, it's illegal.
I'm a repeat offender. Got some other stuff that I still can't mention, unfortunately, but stuff kind of for the fall that is not just that one region. And yeah, we actually shipped out a lot of orders this week, so t-shirts, records, whatever, all still available. Some posters, things along those lines.
Well, one to Kamala Harris, apparently.
Yeah, but she's a big fan. Ron, what do you got?
I'm currently, you can read a lot of my longer form reviews at I'mUncleRon.com. And I'm currently working on a bit of a video essay, but there's not a lot to talk about the 1896 French film, The House of the Devil.
That sounds cool, man.
If you haven't seen it, I mean, I'm gonna show it in the video because it's only 3 minutes long, which was The Irishman back then. So it's but it's very
the movie never ends. I have to crank it by hand.
yeah, but it's amazing how he went from doing something like this that he shot in his garden, and then went and made a trip to the moon, which is so iconic at this point.
Absolutely.
Because there's little warlocks in the moon. You got to hit him with your umbrella.
I just watched Lisa Frankenstein, and I believe that's the movie that they were taking it from, right?
I still haven't seen that.
Oh, okay. So good.
That's streaming on one of the things. I saw that.
Yeah, Amazon, if I remember correct. No, yeah, Amazon.
Oh, well, I saw it on Peacock, so.
Okay. But yeah, I'm doing that, and then so subscribe to my YouTube. It's youtube.com/I'mUncleRon. I have all sorts of stuff that I put up there.
Yeah, enough about that. Where's Lisa Frankenstein streaming? God damn it! Sorry.
Yeah,
hey, 1989. They didn't have live streaming back then.
I still haven't done. A lot of people have been asking for my full length review of Longlegs, but I can't really do it without spoiling a lot of it. It's and actually do a coherent review. So it's best to say that it's best when somebody just lets Nick Cage be Nick Cage.
All right.
It's also very frightening.
We gotta have a debate between you and KT because she really didn't like that movie.
No.
I thought it was fantastic. I think horror, like I was totally content with sitting at home and watching films, and horror has brought me back into the cinema. I saw In a Violent Nature, which was, don't get me fucking started on that movie. Quiet Place Day One. I saw Longlegs.
Quiet Place Day One was directed by the guy who did Pig, right? So I
believe so. It was fantastic. Well, that's what you get when you get an Oscar nominee or whatever in the lead role, and a cat that can act, which is weird.
My cats act every morning. They act hungry, and I know they already fed.
Hey-o!
This one's acting sleepy on my lap right now.
And like Cuckoo. What else? Heretic, The Front Room. All sorts of stuff. Oddity. There's all sorts of stuff bringing, and it's all thanks to horror, because horror is cheap to make and always makes money. Always remember that, but yeah, and plus you can't when it comes
to Texas Chainsaw Massacre, right? Like that's a fucking cheap movie that they made on on a lark, and that movie is still fucking the biggest thing.
It's still showing places, yeah. I actually saw it in the theater right after Toby died at the Avalon in Milwaukee, and
awesome! That's a great theater.
It is, and it was a back-to-back. It was Chainsaw 1 and then Chainsaw 2.
Ooh.
And it was quite an evening. It's like when after George died, Romero died. I went with my buddy to go see Night of the Living Dead at the Avalon, and they fucked up and they played the German dialogue. So you have to wait this entire car ride until they get to
what is this? The Great Dictator?
Yeah, basically. Punch dead people.
Dare Zombie.
Yeah, Der Zombie and Der Bill Hinsman. So yeah, but a lot of and then plus Dan Stevens is in Cuckoo, and I will never pass up a movie that Dan Stevens is in. I just watched.
I'm really excited to see Cuckoo. I want to see that. It looks
knocked off those shining toad. Yeah.
But I just watched The Guest. If you guys haven't seen that, I highly recommend.
I
checking
love
it
The
out.
Guest. I watch anything he's in.
He will not confirm nor deny there's going to be a sequel.
Is it gonna be called The Guests?
Maybe.
Literally,
Well,
he
let's
did
film
a
the dollar
April
sign.
joke about
Yes.
it, and I was like, "You
Yeah.
mother."
Yeah, he's definitely inspired me to get glasses that have a darker tint on them. Because
Not Robert Downing Jr.
No, I'm not going to be Iron Man and then become Doom. Don't get me started on that.
That's the only thing that's stopping you, though. You still want to be seen as unoriginal.
Yes, basically.
Oh, Robert already did that. I can't do that now.
No. So, but yeah, that's what I got going on. So, yeah.
Kristina, what do you have going on? It's been I think like 5 episodes since you've been on.
It
Yeah,
has been a while since you've been on. Yeah. that's right.
yeah, a lot of crap going down. Water heater and then AC. Everything happens on Tuesdays apparently. Well, I've got invited to go on the Hill Rising. Don't know when that's gonna happen.
Oh, congratulations.
Jessica Burbank's out here doing more for my career than Anna Kasperi never did.
Ooh, light her ass up.
But I have a right to.
Let me get some
I know you
tea
do.
first.
Yeah.
And then you spit out the tea. You're like,
yeah. I've been
His monocle
streaming-
pops out. He took off his glasses, put the monocle in, actually. But
Yeah, I've been streaming my ass off. I've been
It's
doing pretty well. I've been getting a lot of views, hoping to get more subs, but I've been crushing it thanks to Majority Report raids and a few other streamer raids, and been blowing up on Twitter for some reason. I don't know what's going on, but I keep posting bangers and getting a lot
you're
of
like, oh my
engagements.
god, there's still a girl on Twitter.
Yes. Yes. And I was just on the Afternoon Tune discussing House of the Dragon season finale, which
oh yeah,
I love
actually
the
watched
fact it was
the
a
season-
trailer for season 3. Let's be
It
real
really
here.
was. I watched it last night and I was like, oh yeah, there's got to be one left, huh? And I was like, that was it? Like it's
Yeah.
like the perfect setup for like the next season, I guess. But it's like there's just no denouement at all, huh? All right.
Yeah. Also, I think this week I'm going to be on the Power Report with Dan and Bam to probably discuss, my boy Tim Waltz. Let's go to the window.
That's right.
To the walls. Okay. Anyway, so that should be exciting. And I did it like a subathon where I went for like 24 hours, but then I got tired and I thought, you know what? There's a lot of people who do subathons for weeks on end, and they air TV shows and like movies. So I, loving Craig Ferguson, aired a bunch of, just had a marathon of Late Late Show with Craig Ferguson from 2011. A lot of people actually stuck around to watch that while I was sleeping.
Now, is that before or after Jeff?
But during 2011.
Okay, because I'm a big fan of Jeff.
Yeah, Josh Robert Thompson's my man. He loves me.
All right, Andy, do you have anything to plug? I know you have your book cover.
Yeah, the book cover that's getting released in September for a book release party in LA. So if you're out in LA, go check that out. I don't think I'm going to be there, but you can get a copy of the book there. So and get it signed by the author. How exciting is that?
It's
All
pretty
right.
exciting.
Ron, do you have some final thoughts to throw out here?
Don't eat sauerkraut, because apparently there's a fake dictator who uses. I don't know. I got nothing. I'm getting kind of tired.
I heard they've been cutting that sauerkraut with fentanyl.
They might be, and they're
Again,
just letting anybody into Tomania these days. But
Gotta build that wall.
Yeah,
They did say they want to bring down national borders. That's part of the guy's speech. Jeez.
yes,
Part of his whole thing.
this isn't for the sons and daughters of the double cross. This is for the children of Israel. But yeah, it's one of my favorite films. It's not my favorite Chaplin film. I think The Kid is my favorite Chaplin film.
Really?
Just because,
Okay.
yeah, it's the emotion, I guess, behind it.
It's all emotion, yeah.
Yeah, and plus the kid in that movie grew up to be Uncle Fester,
The titular kid did grow up to Uncle Fester.
and
yes.
he's the reason for the Coogan Act in Hollywood.
Yes,
Where-
Jackie Coogan. Yeah.
Yes,
That's
it's
right, yeah.
but there's just something about, and that's where I think.
By the way,
The
The
Jackie
acting's
Coogan-
good. I'm more of a fan of the litigation. Anyway, go
Yes,
way,
exactly.
Jackie Coogan
He's
is
an
another-
okay actor, but I like reading the documents from the court proceedings.
Yeah, exactly.
Jackie Coogan was another guy who showed up in Germany, and they said, "Look, it's a Jew," and he wasn't a Jew, but because he was in a movie with Charlie Chaplin, they assumed he was also Jewish.
I like to imagine that when they said it just like that. Look, it's a Jew, which is
that is that how the whole the Jews are in Hollywood, control Hollywood nonsense came from during World War II because the Nazis assumed every actor was a Jew.
Just some dude was yelling, "Look, it's a Jew," even if it wasn't true.
You got to remember that they had a Hopper, I believe it was trying to use the fact that a lot of the heads of studios were Jewish against them to get them to not release Citizen Kane.
Yeah,
that's right.
Because go
ahead,
God, your religion.
Noella Parsons.
Yeah.
Ready for that season of Feud to happen.
But no, I think it's a fantastic film. It's in my top 10. Right by. Well, thank you very much.
We the best.
It's under the Kid probably, and I think that's where Buster Keaton and Charlie Chaplin were way different. Is Chaplin was very like pulling on the heartstrings, and Buster Keaton was like, "Let's see if I can survive this."
Basically, I say that as a fan.
Yeah, and he's basically Buster Keaton was basically Mario before Super Mario Brothers.
Right. Actually, there is that one scene. The general was like, "Man, I think somebody of those video games was a big fan of this movie."
Yeah, that's why I love the Charlie Silence stuff, because it could reach everywhere. And we were saying earlier, like when Andy was talking about his doctor, from Argentina who had a German last name. Go figure. Was he also blonde hair, blue eyed?
Yeah. So weird.
Yeah, but it's just such a good movie, But coming from a guy whose favorite movie is Dawn of the Dead, 1978, I don't know how much credulence. How much credulence I have with that, but
it's top 10 for me too, man.
Yeah, so it's
a great movie.
Why are there fresh cream pies in a mall after the zombie apocalypse has been going on for 2 months?
Cream pies.
Okay.
They let them into the mall. What do you want?
Yeah,
they destroyed part of that mall in real life.
Yeah, the cream pies. The cream pies were just like traveling on the road all alone for the entire apocalypse.
You don't want to get yourself a zombie cream pie. It doesn't go well for you.
No.
Kristina, final thoughts.
This is probably one of the greatest movies of all time. It's one of those films that you have to see. It really is. The final speech is classic, one of the great speeches in a film of all time. Charlie Chaplin took a risk, and eventually it paid off.
He's getting covered on this show.
Yes, exactly.
It paid off when he was in his 70s.
Yeah. When he finally got the Lifetime Achievement Oscar, they were like, "We forgive you for whatever. It was all our fault."
Yeah, sorry about that old communist.
Sorry about that McCarthy.
Communist accusations.
They're like, we can't even remember at this point. Were you pro Hitler, against Hitler? Who knows?
Yeah,
I think they forgave Elia Kazan before they forgave Charlie Chaplin. He was one of the snitches.
Yeah, I tend to forget where McCarthy was from. I try not to. Yeah.
What senator was he? What state was he?
Moving on, Andy.
It was Racine.
He better not be from fucking Racine.
Andy, final thoughts.
The interesting thing about this movie is, a lot of people say that silent movies never quite achieved like their final form before talkies were invented. And I think Charlie Chaplin kind of felt that too. But I believe a lot of the lessons he learned from silent films really took and translated beautifully in this movie in a very cinematic way that a lot of films of the era didn't quite, glom onto. So there's a physicality to this movie that a lot of talkies didn't necessarily have.
And a physicality for a 52-year-old man by the time it came out.
I know that's impressive too. I mean, just sliding down rooftops and missing
getting
things,
knocked down the stairs. That whole
working.
doing the Leonardo DiCaprio and Wolf of Wall Street.
Men are not built the same way anymore, unless you're Hugh Jackman.
My dad.
Well, the only thing anyone's gonna remember is that shitty dismount.
Conan,
but yeah,
let's hear some. Oh, Andy, you want to keep going?
I was just gonna just type back to. Never mind. Go on.
No, you hit,
go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I thought you hit a perfect note of finality in there because you're like. This
I thought I did too. No, wait, I didn't. I thought I had another point and I forgot it. So go on.
All right. Well, I'm sorry for cutting you off. I'm not gonna rip all the medals off your.
I'm not.
Rick Perry forgetting about what the last form of government he's gonna cut. Yeah.
Conan, final thought.
Secret third thing, yeah. Remarkable work of satire that plays really great as a regular comedy, as well as what at the time was like ripped from the headlines commentary, right? And what better way to take down the greatest, most serious threat of the time than with a cutting farce that makes him a laughing stock. I'm a big fan of that. And it's astounding. It's the first time you hear Chaplin speak in this film. And doubly so that it's one of the great appeals to humanistic engagement ever put onto film. And I think this is a lovely movie, and I can't believe it's the first Chaplin we've ever done, but it was great. I thought it was a great conversation.
Yeah, we gotta do some more Chaplin. It's funny, like the first line that he says is like something very like I think it's like oh look or something like that, or like something like that. Like he didn't say the first line that he says in this is not anything like whatever. And it's crazy to put yourself in that mindset. You're like, this is the first time that one of literally the most famous people on earth at that time is like. First time you ever hear a word out of their mouth. Andy, did you think of your point?
No, it's gone. It's
okay,
completely gone.
All right.
But
Well, that's our third show in a week, pretty much. We'll be back next week, this time for Deadpool Wolverine. Or Wolverine Deadpool,
afternoon tune, right?
Depending on who you are. All right.
I'm so sad that my Lady Deadpool cosplay is still in pre-order.
We're sad about that too. How big? It's like it beat Passion of the Christ, which I hate.
Yes, thank God.
So
they even made like a joke about it in one Deadpool movie, I think. Right?
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure they did.
Did you see the statistics that there's been 117 uses of the word "fuck" in Marvel movies, 1 in Guardians of the Galaxy 3, and 116 in Deadpool and Wolverine.
And most of them are from Hugh Jackman.
Yep.
He really does. It is notable. Like it is funny that somebody within the orbit of the show like that was the crux of their review. I'm like, really? But no, it is notable.
There's I saw this thing where I didn't know that Hugh Jackman used to be like a physical education teacher for a couple years.
Can you imagine if that dude was your gym teacher?
Yeah, there's a thing
I would be going to gym class every day.
I bet you would.
You know what got him into wanting to be an actor? He wanted to play Jason Voorhees.
Shut the front door.
I
really?
swear to God.
That's awesome.
That's why I'm a fan. He wanted to play Mama's little baby boy. That's fine by me. Could you imagine him playing Jason Voorhees? Jason's shirt gets ripped off and he's all ripped, and I rip the headphones out of my ear like a fucking idiot.
Yeah, out of excitement. Yeah.
Oh, I thought those were your Wolverine claws.
Friday the 13th.
Your Wolverine claws knocked those headphones out of your ear.
They sure did. Yep.
All right, so that's next week.
Have a Friday the 13th tattoo on my wrist.
There we go.
I'm a fan.
Yeah, sounds like it. Well, that's what we're gonna do. And so we'll see you then.